We already introduced the concept of Shakti. The Shakti is generally the female counterpart of the god. As we mentioned last class, the god emerges out of the cosmic darkness and must divide himself into two in order to procreate, in order to produce. So the first bullet here, I think, very well characterizes the situations that as wives embrace their husbands, as husbands embrace their wives, so do people yearn to embrace the divine. So the familial or heterosexual or human concept of marriage, of the uniting of two people into one, that sense of lust and passion, desire, and sense of urgency in order to find that other with which you will become united as one and reach ultimate fulfillment is also seen on the cosmic level as well. So that metaphor also extends to humans' continual search for the divine, the desire to embrace the divine, the desire to love the divine, and to find that sense of heightened joy through that ideal union. So each god has their own Shakti. We mentioned Vishnu had Lakshmi. We mentioned that Shiva has Parvati. Sometimes they are visualized and identified as wives, but sometimes the Shakti could be a whole host of female counterparts that complement the god's mission. So they refer to Shakti as a female persona who provides that level of energy, productivity, growth necessary for procreation, that the god himself is incapable of creation unless he has this alter ego energy source. So Shakti is always visualized as an human. There's a sense of personhood within that Shakti for that sense of carnal or physical union. Shakti also is related to the Divine Mother. We'll get into some of those issues today as well. But as we mentioned with Krishna, who is the embodiment of joy, rasa, the sense of pleasure, erotic play, that Lila concept is very much a part of the god and his Shakti. It's not all work, but there's also a sense of dalliance, of joy, of eroticism, of sensual play that represents the valorization, that represents the beauty of that sexuality within the relationship. So in slide number 3, we are reminded of many of the topics we discussed in the early Buddhism, and that is the whole notion of the Yakshi. The Yakshis, we start to see the representations of them in the Buddhist realm during the Mauryan dynasty. We had images of female, voluptuous females, even in the Indus Valley civilization going back a couple thousand years even earlier. So in terms of the various documents, the ideal female form, the voluptuousness, the large breasts, the narrow adolescent waistline, the full hips, the sense of that sensual reality that is aligned with fertility and well-being. So not only do these yakshis represent carnal sensuality, physical sensuality, the procreative possibilities of the female, but it also represents, on a more abstract level, cultural or societal prosperity and plenty. So as we have in this example, the ample amount of jewelry, We even have some floral and plant-like forms on her clothing. The Akshi represents fertility and well-being in all aspects of earthly existence, the flora, the fauna, as well as the economic prosperity of society. Number 4, we have seen before, slide number 4, and this is the linga within the yoni. So this is really the male and female united together. This is the male element with his Shakti that is visualized as a vaginal uterine form, gynocentric form with swimmers, that the two are locked together, and it is in this format that creativity, prosperity, and fecundity on all levels of human and cosmic realities can be accomplished. This metaphor of the God and the Shakti in order to create fertility is also apparent in temple architecture. That actually will be the topic of the next video lecture. We see that there is a porch. We talked about porches before with Vishnu in the avatar, where he's standing on the porch outside of the palace in order to kill the evil king. So we have the steps leading up to an open air porch, partly inside, partly outside. We have a squared building room that is the home of the god. The gods actually are considered to be living within these structures, so there is a spiritual, supernatural component in that deep, dark interior space. The deep interior space is also referred to as the Garbhagriha, which is the womb chamber, W-O-M-B, the womb chamber. And when we look at the next slide, we are actually inside of one of these temples, and you can see we're standing outside by the porch looking into the interior sanctum, the dark, mysterious room, and there on the floor is the linga in the yoni. So the temple also represents this sense of the god and his Shakti, of this mating between the male and the female cosmic powers. And even as you look at the exterior of the temple, you can see the Shikara Tower, and above the tower, and again, the tower is located above this womb chamber, above the Garbhagriha. So this is where, in slide number 6, this is where the energy takes place, where the mating takes place, where the tapas and rasa and all the other cosmic forces converge, and it shoots up, and then we have the extension of the tower at the summit of the temple, and at the very, very top of the tower, we have the Amalaka, which is sometimes translated as the cosmic egg. So you have this mating of male and female, and then with the axis mundi, the vertical line going up from that point through the tower all the way to the summit is the cosmic egg. So egg, male, female, fertilization, it's a very sexualized narrative. So when we look at slide number 7, many people associate relief sculptures like this with temple decorations, relief carvings on the exteriors. There are many such images of loving couples. In Buddhism, we mention the term Mithuna couple, loving couples on the outside. In these Hindu buildings, it's much more of erotic play than just husband and wife standing together, as was in the case in Karli and other cave temples and structures. Here, there's more erotic play. There is more sense of excitement. There is sometimes from the Kama Sutra a variety of different body positions. not always for procreation purposes, but simply the playfulness between the female and the male elements. So here we have another detail from the famous temple at Khajuraho. Again, we'll look at temple architecture and design next lecture. But that erotic play, the embrace, the two bodies becoming one, many of these issues are global, universal. They transcend various religious systems. That sense of the unification as the ultimate fulfillment. And the relationship of this narrative with a temple, with a religious structure, again, is that this type of unification, this type of mating, is a metaphor for one's search and one's embrace of God, him or herself. So let's get to the goddess herself. The goddess's power is absolute. They have complete authority. They do not have to get permission from their male counterpart for their actions, for their tactics, their strategies. They are completely independent in terms of wielding of their power. Generally in India, goddesses are categorized into two separate areas. One is the goddess of the breast. One is the goddess of the tooth. It's a very positive, negative duality, very easy to understand. So the goddess of the breast is the auspicious, bountiful, fertile woman. She's linked to life cycles. She is the natural woman, healthy innocence. She's a role model for wives. So she takes care of her husband, she takes care of the children, she takes care of the household. She ensures there's food on the table, she fetches water. So it is the woman who is beautiful, endearing, the dutiful wife, the dutiful mother, the basic stereotype from a patriarchal society. But she has powers unto herself. The other goddess is the goddess of the tooth. This is the woman who subverts traditional gender roles. So we have, in what many societies consider to be like the good woman, the good wife, and then we have the rebellious, subservient, not subservient, the rebellious antagonistic woman who is completely subverting all rules and regulations that traditionally govern women's roles in a patriarchal society. So the goddess of the tooth is ambivalent. She's dangerous. She is in charge of her own sexuality. She determines what she wants rather than waiting for the male to take the lead. She's worshipped in times of crisis, epidemics. I don't know what her role is in coronavirus. She's a dominator. She is a militaristic female, non-feminine marital role, martial role, and obviously an inversion, a subversion of all traditional gender roles. So the goddess has a tremendous range of personas, a tremendous range of identities. There are many sculptures such as this. It's called the Seven Mothers, the Saptamatrika. So you can actually see when you look at them, they are supposed to be a variety of ages, a variety of personalities. You see the one on the far right, your far right, is a little more haggard, emaciated, older, with withered breasts. The third from our right, actually has a horse head, an animal head. So the seven mothers represent the wide diversity of feminine personas that exist within this realm. Some of these personas are specifically related as Shaktis to particular gods, but some of them have quite a bit of independence in asserting their own identity and their own objectives. Many of them are holding lotuses, they're holding weapons, they're holding a discus. So again, showing their ability to be called into action whenever it is necessary. We again have the range of the seven mothers. So the one on the left, which clearly we would identify as a goddess of the breast, not just because of the definition of the breast, but because benign, happy, cheerful, welcoming, curvaceous body representing fertility in its multiple aspects. A halo behind her head represents divine status as opposed to just an ordinary mortal. She has her earrings, she has her summer skirt, she has like the little scarf that comes across her shoulders over her arms. She has the three bends of the body, a little bit of a European contrapposto. So in her grace and elegance, her smiling face, her very round head and chubby cheeks, she represents the benign aspects of a female goddess. In the slide on the right is the absolute opposite. So there, the body has been emaciated to such an extreme that we have the stomach extremely sunken in under the rib cage. The ribs are completely exposed. The breasts are so withered. The bottom parts have broken off. So the nipple parts of the breasts have broken, but the breasts are so withered that obviously there's no more nourishment in terms of milk. The face is very skeletal, death-like, again, emaciated. The artist has a good sense of the skull structure, except the eyes are very much projecting out of the eye socket. We have good temples, we have good cheekbones, we have a good jawline and a chin line, but the artist's intent is to show a tremendous amount of age, that the woman has lost her more feminine graces, as we see in her counterpart on the left of the slide. And obviously, with her teeth exposed, it looks like fangs, her tongue projecting outward. It's a much more malignant, much more martial, more militaristic, more fearsome representation of the female, the empowered female. So many people ask, well, what about the cow in Indian society? The cow is revered, and how does this play into the whole notion of the goddess and the representation of the female? So as we have Shiva and Parvati, we have the cow and the bull. It's all about these dualities that exist, these opposites that must unify in order for the planet to survive and life to survive. So the cow is considered to be a metaphor for the earth. The milk obviously is a universal food source. It is the first food source for newborn children. So the cow is milked. Good and evil substances come from the cow. So this whole relationship with the milk as being the progenitor for the origination, for the nutrients that run all beings on the planet, even the gods and the demons. The cow is revered by agriculturalists because obviously the cow is a sign of wealth. The more cows, the more wealth. But the agriculturalists those who grow crops, obviously focus on milk production as a way to fuel the food system. The cow is generally considered to be passive, receptive, but obviously a creative force in any society. Like we mentioned, goddess of the tooth, goddess of the breath, the cow represents the goddess of the breast. And because she is so willing to feed others, the cow is self-sacrificing and does not ask for anything in return. Humans take from the cow, they take the milk, the cow asks for nothing back. So the cow is feeding humanity, and out of respect, you don't eat the cow. So she is a psychological symbol of goodness, love, self-sacrifice, and unending charity and giving to humanity. The bull we saw is the Vahana Shiva. And obviously the bull is revered more by pastoralists, those who have herds of cattle and attain their wealth and attain their economic status through the plentifulness of the migrating or moving herds. The bull, though, in this realm is passive. We saw Nandi. Nandi is passive. Nandi was simply a vehicle of Shiva. And as a bull, his virility is held in check by the human master or the divine master. So when we look at the cow and bull, it's not like one is passive, one is aggressive, one is submissive, one is dynamic. Both of them represent a model of male-female marriage and relationship that actually is seen as being quite healthy. Devi is a term that is often used for female goddesses. So the goddess herself has multiple roles. So as the goddess of the breath, it's a maternal role, a maternal personality. And then we have the role of the goddess of the tooth that's a little more provocative, a little more aggressive, dominating, free from the rules and regulations of traditional conservative societies. Now, as we mentioned last class, Brahma's a creator, Vishnu's a creator, Shiva sees himself as a creator. Well, who created all of them? Maybe a woman. So Devi claims to have created Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Then she divided herself into 3 parts and became the Shakti of each of them. But Shiva, as the ascetic, because of his erotic play, because also his strength, his convictions, his ability to focus, his strong sense of motivation, Shiva won her over. So with his asceticism, his ability to focus, meditate, contemplate, and also for his spirituality, Devi became his wife more so than the wife of Brahma or the wife of Vishnu. So Devi was pleased with Shiva, so he took the form of the linga and she took the form of the yoni. So male and female again. There are many versions to these narratives, but obviously she is an essential persona in the Hindu narrative. So here we have the beginning of a couple representations of Devi. So in slide number 14, there she is. She holds some of the same accessories as we've seen before. She is holding the trident. She's holding a sword. She has some flowers. We've seen the lotus quite often being held by various gods. It looks like a rose, some other types of blossoms. And in her top left hand on our right side, it looks like the scriptures. She has a crown, she has jewelry, she has necklaces, she has bracelets, she has beautiful contemporary clothing. This image is from the 20th century. So she represents a beauty standard that is prominent within Indian culture. In the bottom left of the scene, we see some other women. The bottom right of the scene is various women. The bottom left of the scene, we have that water source. Remember, water is an essential part of Hindu temples, shrines. It represents the cosmic ocean upon which Vishnu reclines. In the top left, we have a city gate with a man on a horse. So that represents urban or political, social, economic pursuits. And in the top right of the scene, it's a temple. So as we've seen a little while back, there we have the temple. We're looking through the porch, and there we have within the Holy of Holies, the dark interior space of the Garbhagriha, the place where we have the unification of the linga and the yoni. So we have religious symbols, political social symbols here. We have contemporary women who obviously pray to Devi, are inspired by Devi, and then we have the water source on the bottom left. The whole landscape is very lush, very green, because Devi represents the fertility of nature in its broadest aspects, planet Earth in its broader aspects. And her halo has a garland of flowers around it, looks mostly like roses. And of course, she's seated on a rooster. In societies, roosters are associated with a male principle, so she's riding the rooster. So again, like we have the linga united with the yoni, here she's on the rooster. So this symbolism carries over on many different metaphorical levels. Slide number 15 is obviously an older image of Devi, but again, associated with fertility in nature, fertility of animals and plants, just as we had Krishna playing his flute, and all of nature is celebrating that happiness and that pleasure, the rasa, the lila, the various forms of play and joy and the plentifulness of the world around us. Here we have peacocks who seem to be coming and adorning the realm of Devi. And here we have two sculptural images of the goddess of the breath, maybe of the breast, maybe Devi, it may be some other manifestations of the seven mothers. Quite often, as we see here in sculpture, they have that lyrical pose, that S-curve pose, whether we call it in Western art history as the contrapposto, or whether we call it here the body of the three bends. It is a very lithe, dance-like, lyrical, elegant, noble positioning of the body that shows off the beautiful curves and counter curves of the woman's anatomy. And in almost all these cases, you know it's a goddess of the breast because of the well-being upon their face, the smile, the glimmer in the eyes, the long hair. So there's a sense of well-being in these statues. I mentioned a couple lectures ago that Lakshmi is the wife of the Shakti of Vishnu. So she comes upon a 1,000-petaled lotus arising from the cosmic waters. So the lotus imagery, again, very important for Lakshmi, as she is seen as being the earth goddess in many of these narratives. So she's associated with the womb of the universe. She is the one who is lotus born. She is the one standing on lotus. She is the one that is lotus eyed. So we talked quite often about the gods and goddesses seated or standing on a lotus and having various facial features, such as the eyelid in a flower petal shape. So that type of imagery and metaphor carries over to Lakshmi. Waters are considered feminine, maternal, procreative aspects of the absolute. So the fact that Vishnu is lying on a snake mattress in the dark cosmic waters also would give a sense that he is surrounded by the female principle, and it is only within that cosmic environment that he is able to create the Maya in his own imagination. So she's also referred to as the goddess moisture, the goddess earth, and she and Vishnu have two children and their sons, two sons, and their sons are mud and moisture. While those names may not be so attractive on a birth certificate, it represents the fact that she represents that the fertility of land, that is very important in an agriculturalist or pastoralist society, and that right balance between the soil and the water content. So in slide number 18, we've seen this before. It was from the Shunga dynasty from Bharhut, one of the relief sculptures, medallions representing a woman who is being bathed by two elephants. All of them are on lotus flowers representing plentifulness, the presence of soil, mud, moisture, and water. The elephants have each a pot of water, and they fill it and they dump it on the head of the woman as she is getting this celestial style shower. It is important to note the large vase or pot. So out of the pot comes various budding lotus flowers, a full lotus upon which the goddess stands, and it also supports the lotuses upon which the elephants stand. So a pot of water with vines and flowers emerging from it, again, is a symbol of that plentifulness of the goddess of the breast. So in this case, it may not be Lakshmi, it may not be any of these Hindu goddesses, particularly if we could just describe it as a representation of Yakshi, of that nature fertile spirit, that with her presence, we have a tremendous flourishing of vegetation. Slide number 19, obviously it's a much more contemporary representation of Lakshmi. 4 arms. There is no general rule or regulation as to how many arms one of these figures should have or can have. It could be 2, it could be multiples as we have here. Obviously, the 2 upper hands both hold lotuses, again relating to the slide we just saw, and she is seated in a yogic posture within a lotus. It is also curious to notice that out of her right hand, which is like a welcoming gesture we've seen many times before, it seems out of that hand, it's almost like a Christian stigmata, some sort of divine marking. Out of that emanates this shower of golden coins. So again, these goddesses of the breast represent plenty, prosperity, wealth. So sometimes we may think, oh, it's like a nature spirit, it's a Mother Earth figure, but these gods and goddesses also can provide blessings for material prosperity and wealth. So here we just have an older relief sculpture. So there we have the goddess, similar in body to what we've seen before. angels up above, figures adoring beneath. The one on the right looks like a demon because of the misshapen body. An animal underfoot. You have these curves and counter curves that represent the swelling of the waves. So again, a very close association with water. And here, so slide number 21 is her from the side. Not only do we see her again in the porch of a temple, but we even look a little further to our right in the slide, and there's another one. So we have a multiplication of these procreative, fertile elements throughout the Indian world and obviously throughout Hinduism. There is no sense of excessive exposure like we would have in a more puritanical society, like in the West or even Islam. We don't have that sense of shame or something else of that character that we have such an open display of sexuality and sensuality. That is not the case. It is all a celebration of the life forces that govern planet Earth. So now let's get to goddesses of the tooth, because obviously for many people, they're much more interesting. So Devi can also be a goddess of the tooth. Devi is just the general nomenclature for the goddess. But the goddesses of the tooth have many different narratives, many different personifications, as you can imagine. So the most common, sometimes Devi, Kali, we'll get to a little bit later. Now, goddesses of the tooth, again, are the embodiment of the malignant forces that exist within the universe. Not for the destruction of the universe, but in order to reassert balance within the universe. So the source of all evil, the corruptors of mankind, it is death herself. The goddess of the tooth, a responsibility for checking human populations, which I think is interesting. So I'll read you a little part from some of these Hindu myths. The gods wanted to create, so this is a curious aspect of the gender relationships between the male and the female, that we've seen Shiva, we've seen Brahma, we've seen Vishnu, and Vishnu in some of his avatars has taken a very aggressive stance in order to show humanity the evil of their ways and that they should follow the proper path of existence. We've seen that, but Vishnu in his lion avatar was willing to completely destroy the evil king. We have that type of narrative quite often, but the overall objective is to destroy evil so then the righteous will prevail. Okay? But there are many times when there needs to be the destruction of many people, of societies. There needs, the gods need to send down a plague. The gods need to wipe out populations. We have that in the Judeo-Christian with Sodom and Gomorrah. So the gods needed to create death, and death is female. It's very curious that the gods, Vishnu can sit in his Maya and recline half asleep on his snake mattress. Brahma can sit on his lotus and just meditate on the kalpas and the eons as they go by. Shiva can dance up a storm and create the earth and then dissolve the earth. But who actually deals with population control and death? They had to create a woman to do that because the men didn't want to. So there are various narratives where the gods tried to devise this scheme and to create a goddess who would be in charge of death. But obviously, the woman they approached, the goddess they approached, said, but if I'm responsible for the mass murder of so many people, I'm going to end up in hell. It is not good for my soul. I am not in the service of God and the divine. So they try to convince her over and over again, and she keeps going into these ascetic searches for righteousness, trying to reconcile the need for death with the need for her own salvation and eternal well-being. So finally, they assure her that it still will be good Dharma, it's not bad Dharma, it still be good Dharma because you are working in the service of the Lord. So there's a sense of Dharma, a Dharma, that this will all get you good benefit. So then she began to destroy the life's breath of creatures that breathe at the time of their end. So she is the one who, there at your last breath, is watching over you and presiding over your death, bewildering them with desire and anger, the gods. So she is not evil, but she is frightening. She is cursed. She is scary. But she eventually decides to take this role. So she can, from her teardrops, became diseases which injure the bodies of men. Thus, death was created by God, and when the appointed time comes, she destroys creatures as is proper. And the tears she shed are the diseases which destroy creatures when the proper time has come. So again, what her role is in coronavirus, I have no idea. But she's behind all death on planet Earth. So the worshiper does not dare to make contact with her, does not dare to even have having erotic contact with her, because that would be absolute self-annihilation. So when we talk about a god and a Shakti, Shiva with Parvati, when Parvati is in her malignant Shakti, or Vishnu when Lakshmi is in her malignant Shakti, you don't have sex with your Shakti when she is in this dangerous mindset, because she is so fearful that even the male gods tremble. So Durga. So Durga is one of the two most famous of these chilling goddesses. So there's also a story behind this, that the various monsters, the various demons were setting out to destroy planet Earth. So the male gods were all very fearful of the demons, and they did not want to even approach. They were too scared that they were going to lose the battle. So therefore, they had to make woman. So the great mass of these gods united their energies. So their energies all together were akin to a blazing mountain that pervaded all the regions of the sky with flames. So the gods consolidated all of their tapas, all of their heat and energy, which was like a mountain pure of flames. Then from the combination of these energies, a woman appeared. Her head appeared from the energy of Shiva, her 2 arms from the energy of Vishnu, her 2 feet from the energy of Brahma. And it goes on and on. Her waist, her hair, her breasts, her thighs, her hips, her toes, her fingers, her nose, her teeth, her eyes, all came collectively from the contributions of the gods. So they created her as a necessary measure, not only to preserve the balance of good and evil, but the most famous narrative slaying of the buffalo demon. Now, India today is a very populous country. It has always been a populous country, so there was always a need amongst the gods to have population control measures, whether that be disease, whether it be a tsunami, whether it be other types of natural disasters. So Durga, along with Devi, the other manifestations, are responsible for this. So slide 24 is obviously a more contemporary representation of one of these Devis in a monstrous manifestation. So with her sword, it looks as if she's going to chop off the head of that man. One hand, it's good to have multiple arms and multiple hands. So with one hand, she's able to hold his hair, with another one hold his neck, one to hold his chest, and the other one to hold his wrist, because he at this point is holding the sword. So she is going to wrestle the weapon from him in order to destroy. So we see the trident, we see the discus, we see other types of weaponry. She has a sword in her lower right hand. We have fire, which obviously is a very good weapon. We have the conch shell. So here she is, ready to do battle. Her face is still very serene because fully confident of her own ability. So in slide 25, an older example, there she is, multiple arms. It has quite a bit of breakage, but you can see the various weapons that would have been in the arms. She's got the halo, she's got the angels up above, and just as we saw in some representations of Shiva Nataraja, she is trampling a demon underfoot. So now let's get to the narrative of Durga slaying the buffalo demon. So the buffalo demon was threatening the cosmic order of the universe. That's what these demons and evil beings generally try to do. So as we've already heard about in some stories, these demons can wreak so much havoc upon planet Earth that the planet literally shakes. So maybe that was a very primordial justification or narrative explaining earthquakes. But the earth is shaking, the gods are in an uproar, the gods create Durga, that she should go and battle the buffalo demon instead of them. So here's the discussion of the battle. When his own army was totally destroyed, the buffalo demon assumed his own buffalo form and terrified the troops of the goddess. That's what we see in this image. Here we see the buffalo demon with a buffalo head, human body. Here we have his army. And on the left side, there is the goddess, much smaller in scale, upon her vahana, with some of her army. Okay? Some he struck with his muzzle, others he trampled with his hooves. So that's when the buffalo demon assumed this form. He is striking various enemy forces, trampling the enemy underfoot. You see some human figures who are almost lying on the ground, unable to rise up. Some he lashed with his tail and pierced with his two horns. Others he rushed at and roared and whirled about. And still others he hurled down upon the surface of the earth by means of the hurricane of his breath. When he had thus felled the vanguard of the goddess's army, which looks to be happening here, the great demon attacked her lion in order to kill him, and then she became angry. Now, her vahana in this representation is the lion. Now, you remember Parvati? What is Parvati's vehicle? Her vahana. Her vahana is a feline. It could be a lion, a tiger, or a panther. So here is Durga just a malignant manifestation of Parvati, that it's almost the same Vahana. The great hero became angry too, and he pounded the surface of the earth. That is the Vahana. The Vahana became angry too, and he pounded the surface of the earth with his hooves and tossed the mountains high. The buffalo demon roared. The earth was shattered by the poundings of his swift turns. The ocean, lashed by his tail, overflowed on all sides. The clouds, pierced by his swaying horns, were broken into fragments. So the clouds are breaking apart based on the force of the buffalo demon. Mountains fell from the sky by the hundreds, cast down by the blast of the buffalo demon's breath. When the fierce goddess saw the great demon attacking, swollen so much with anger, she became frantic to kill him. She hurled her noose, a rope, over him and bound him up, tied him up. But when he was thus bound in the great struggle, he changed from his buffalo form and he became a lion. So then he was able to wiggle out of the rope. Then the goddess cut off his head. At that point, he appeared as a man with a sword in his hand and a shield. But the goddess took her arrows and quickly shot him. See, in this image, it looks like bow and arrow. She's getting prepared, taking an arrow out of the quiver that is on her back and is about to cast it towards the buffalo demon. Then the great demon once more assumed his buffalo shape and shook the triple world, meaning the underworld, the earthly zone, the heavenly zone, moving and still. Enraged by this, the furious mother of the universe drank the supreme wine. Her eyes became red. She laughed. The demon roared, puffed up, and intoxicated with his own strength and courage, and with his own two horns, he hurled mountains at the furious goddess. But she pulverized these missiles with a hail of arrows. Then she spoke to him, her symbols slow and confused with the passion. The goddess said, "Roar and roar for your moment, you fool, while I drink my honeyed wine. The gods will soon roar when I have slain thee." Then she leapt up, mounted that great demon. She jumped upon him, kicked him in the neck with her foot, pierced him with her trident. When he was struck by her foot, he came halfway out of his own mouth. So there again, cut off his head, and then out of the interior of his decapitated corpse, another being came out. It's like Sigourney Weaver in Aliens. And then, as he came halfway out, the goddess cut off his head with his great sword, and he fell. Thus, the buffalo demon was destroyed by the goddess, together with his army and her band of friends, when he had bewitched the triple world. And when the buffalo had fallen, all creatures in the triple world, along with all the gods, demons, and men, shouted victory. A cry of lamentation arose from the entire demon army as it was destroyed, and all the bands of the gods rejoiced. So in slide number 27, when you see a goddess, multiple arms, weapons, fearsome, and some sort of animal, human figure underneath, this case again like a bull head, because you can see the horns, this head is upside down as she twists it backwards. That is Durga slaying the buffalo demon. So it's very easy to recognize. It's a very popular narrative, not only because it represents in a way, women's empowerment, like don't fool with a woman, like hell hath no fury, more fury than a woman scorned. So it is a good representation of the female in its most powerful role. Again, she shows no fear, and she treads where men will not go. And the buffalo demon has no chance, although he puts up an excellent battle. It's the same thing again. So on the left, we have her twirling her arms in the air, each arm holding a weapon. She is on her feline. It can look like a lion, it can look like a tiger, whatever the creature may be. We have bodies underfoot as if they are littering the battlefield. And they're on the right, while the body is human. In this case, the face is human, but it looks like he has a hat on that is like bull horns. So that we would interpret as being the representation of the buffalo demon. And here we have a more contemporary, more folk art visualization. So there she is riding on her vahana, which is a lion type of figure. Even the lion has a more angry facial expression with fangs coming out. And there we have the body of the goddess poised for action. So slide number 30, we introduce Kali. I'll read a little description of what she looks like. She is dark as a great cloud, clad in dark clothes. Her tongue is poised as if to lick. She has fearful teeth, sunken eyes, and is grinning. She wears a necklace of snakes. The half moon rests on her forehead. She has matted hair and is engaged in licking a corpse. Her sacred thread is a snake. The sacred thread I mentioned before, like with Shiva, it is that, looks like a cord that is worn like a sash across the chest. So here, her sacred thread is a snake, and she lies on a bed of snakes. She holds a garland, like a necklace, a string of 50 heads, skulls. She has a large belly, and on her head is Ananta with 1,000 heads. On all sides, she's surrounded by snakes. She has a snake girdle, jewelry made of snakes. On her left is to be imagined Shiva. She has 2 hands and has corpses for ear ornaments. Her face, decked with bright new jewels, shows that she is pleased and calm. So she is delight, she is terror. She has a sensual side, but also horrific side. So she also represents that duality of the goddess who is protecting humanity, protecting the world order, but also who can destroy with a glance. Some people believe that primordial associations tie her with blood sacrifices. So like Durga, she is born from wrath, taking delight in destruction and death. She epitomizes the wild and fearful aspects of all that is divine. She has supreme authority, like Durga. She can decapitate, she can crush, she can kill. Generally, she is located in the cremation yards. And quite often, cremation yards are located on the banks of rivers. So again, Hindus are cremated. The burning fires are continually ignited. They are always aflame. So there are always ashes in the sky. And dances. She dances among the dead, and her entourage is the ghost. Because she lives in the cremation yards where there's so much ash, quite often her skin is quite dark. So we might say that her skin is almost black because of the ashes. So this is a 19th century sculpture from southern India. And here we see her skin is completely dark. That, again, it generally is not any, there are generally no ethnic associations with it. It simply is that she is covered in soot from the cremation yards. We see, if we start at the top, we have the fangs, we have quite often the tongue out, we have almost blood dripping out of the mouth. Here she has a necklace, a garland that is created out of skulls or decapitated heads. She still has necklaces, she still has the arm bracelets, she has a very fancy girdle or heavy belt. When we talk about girdle, we're talking about a heavy belt. Otherwise, she's not wearing much in the way of clothing. She has anklets and beautiful jewels on her feet as well. But obviously, she's holding in her lower left hand a decapitated head. Maybe that's her purse. Maybe that's her pocketbook. Maybe, she opens it up and she keeps her keys or whatever else in there. I don't know. But she is walking on the bloated body of a corpse. So again, that is a dead male body. So it shows her primacy over death. She presides over death. She presides over the cremation yards. She is in ultimate control. So in slide number 33, there she is again. So holding skulls, decapitated heads in her right hand, holding full corpses in her left hand. She's standing on a bloated corpse. And it looks like, she eats it. It is, so they're in her, okay. What is her belt? What is that on her belt? It's not snakes. It's human hands. So she has a belt, a girdle, composed of human hands, so dismemberment. And when you look at what is she eating, what is in her top right hand, it's a hand. So therefore she's eating these dismembered corpses. So number 34, there again, she's walking around the cremation yards, the bloated corpse underfoot. In her left hand, again, a decapitated head. Whether that is an accessory or clothing, I don't know. She has the big garland of skulls, of decapitated heads, and a weapon in her top left hand. The same imagery over and over. It becomes very easy to recognize. And when you look at the ground a little better, you look very closely. Obviously, this painting has a little more European style to it with the light and shadowing, the 3D modeling. This actually has mass on all the figures. And when you slowly see the various values of colors on the ground, you look closely, it's all body parts. There are various bodies, decapitated heads, littering the battlefield. Another contemporary image. Holding a head in one hand, and it looks like the blood is dripping down into a bowl because she'll drink blood. Her tongue is out, showing, I would say hunger, but bloodlust. We have the heads as her necklace, hands as her skirt. Snakes, if you look closely, you may say that the bracelets and the anklets are snake-like forms, but it looks more like just golden jewelry. You see a snake that's entwining around the corpse underfoot. But then when you look at the landscape, the grass is very green, it is flowering. We see various figures behind her that are like celebrating, or is it a battlefield? You have various skeletons in the background and people with lances or spears or staff, like celebrating a victory. So, do we need to fear anything from Kali or Durga? They're just doing their job. They're just, checking population control. They are bringing death to humanity. Without death, we would be like the immortals themselves. And we would not be able to be reincarnated and participate in these cycles of rebirth that will bring us closer to union with the divine, moksha. So they simply play a very vital role in these cycles of life and death that become a very important part of the Nataraja, the cycles of birth and death, the Kalpa narrative of the eons as they come and go. When the world is dissolved and to be created anew, these goddesses of the tooth simply play their part and do it with a sense of empowerment that perhaps would be inspirational, aspirational for women in Indian society. Okay, so that is our lecture on the goddesses. So the next lecture will be on the Hindu temple. Thank you very much.